Well, good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning, October 4th, 2022. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time to talk about strategies, success stories, tactics, and support each of you. Today, we're going to have kind of a blended topic. On one side, you could say today we're going to talk about the importance of having a bio, regardless if you are a small business owner seeking to raise capital, or if you are a white label partner seeking to go out and help small business owners. But that bio, which my humble bio is here, is one of the 5 C's. So we're going to dig into the bio concept in a minute. Let's start on the left-hand side of the screen, looking at the agenda, which addresses the 5 C's. Now, in many cases, we'll talk about the 3 C's, but I've alluded to that there's more than 3 C's. There's actually 5. The 3 are the main 3 that we talk about. But let's go through the 5 C's, and then we'll get over to the importance of you having a bio. Now, some people, not you, hopefully not me, but some people are simple-minded. So what they'll do is they'll hear a little bit of information and then they'll extrapolate it out. And sometimes they'll do that inaccurately. So if you find yourself thinking, oh shit, I have to have all 5 C's to get funded, I'm hosed, then that's incorrect. That's not what we're saying. Why? Different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria. No, we don't have to have all 5 C's to get funded, but of course, the more of the 5 C's we have, the better off we are. So don't let yourself fall into this conclusion of, oh, well, if I have to have all 5 C's, then this won't work for me or it won't work for my clients. That's not what we're saying. Some sources of capital only look at one of the 5 C's. Some of them look at 2, 3, 4. Some of them look at all 5. That's why we have to gather the data from the client to figure out what's the right type of capital based upon their mitigating circumstances. Let's go ahead and briefly review the 5 C's, and then we'll dig into really the focus today of making sure that you have a bio prepared and why your clients will need a bio for their loan package in a perfect world. Okay, so we have 5 C's. C1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First one's credit. 2 types of credit that you and I deal with. Business credit. Business credit is the credit worthiness of the business itself, of the business's demonstrated history of paying its bills. So there's different credit bureaus for business credit. Main 3 are Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, and Equifax Business. Now, I know on the personal credit side, we have TransUnion and Experian and Equifax, but Equifax Business is different than Equifax. Experian Business is different than just Experian. So there's 3 primary bureaus on the business credit side, and we help clients when they're going through the Access to Capital program build their business credit worthiness. That's part of Module 2, as you probably know. If clients need help strengthening their personal credit, we can help them as well with that. So the first of the 5 C's is credit. The second, and these don't have to be in a particular order. So when I say the first and second, that's just simply how they're listed on the page today. We might have done this a week ago and I might have listed them in a different order. So don't get hung up on the order. The second of the 5 C's that we'll talk about is collateral. Well, what is collateral? Collateral would be the assets pledged by the borrower to the lender to mitigate the risk in case the borrower falls behind on payments. We're used to that, right? If you and I go get a mortgage for our primary residence, the bank's going to put a lien against the house. And if we don't pay our mortgage on our house, they're going to come foreclose on it. If we get a car loan, typically the car there'll be a lien against the car title. And if we don't pay for the car payments, they'll come out in the middle of the night, hook up a tow truck and zoom off, repossess our vehicle. So Collateral is very easy to understand when it's a direct tie between the borrowed purpose and the asset, like the home, like the car. A lot of what you and I will do will be working capital loans, and so that's not tied to a specific asset. So we'll want to make sure that our clients have a strong enough balance sheet to be able to demonstrate that they have collateral to be worthy of the amount borrowed. And so that's the second bullet here, is you and I, as technical advisors, are able to literally provide assets to clients to improve their financial statements. And we call that our collateral support program. My goal is not to go deep into each of these resources, but we're going to cover at a high picture, high level, the 5 C's. So we've talked about credit as the first of the 5 C's. Collateral is the second. Does every loan require collateral? No. Does every loan look at credit? No. Some look at business credit. Some look at personal credit. Some look at both types of credit. Some look at no types of credit. Remember, because that's the rule. Different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria. The third C that we'll discuss is capacity. And that's, you could call it cash flow if you want, but really what it means to the lender is, does this borrower have the ability to repay a loan? A little more complicated, right? Because we have our historic cash flow, in other words, what we have coming in now. But of course, if we borrow money and we invest it into our business, then we're going to have financial projections that will hopefully grow and show greater profitability. So I do understand that there's 2 phases of capacity. Where are we right now? And then where does it look like we'll be in the future once we have the additional capital to grow our business? Because I'll get a lot of pushback from someone that's got a brand new business. And they say, well, of course I don't have capacity. I don't have cash flow yet. It's a brand new business. I'm pre-revenue. Well, I understand that every business starts at that point. And so financial projections matter. And that's part of what we help clients with. But to no surprise, some lenders, not all, will also look at right now. What is your capacity? What is your cash flow? So again, we have a resource. So if you and I have a client that does not have good capacity, does not have good cash flow, we can help them have increased capacity / cash flow. And we call that the opportunity fund. So what you can see is, you and I, the strength of what we do is not only building financial literacy, not only building loan packages, but you and I literally help people become more credible on paper by addressing these C's, right? Okay, so that was collateral. Now, I'm sorry, that was capacity, sorry. So now we're on to commercial address, the 4th C. What you and I know that not everyone does is the address of the business matters. Now, we're not talking about where you work from. I'm sitting in my physical, unique commercial office right now. But just the same, I could be, I guess, sitting on the beach in the Caribbean. I could be in my back bedroom in my pajamas. Where we work from is not the point. It's where the business is domiciled. The official address of the business is what we're talking about. So what you and I know is that having a unique commercial address is more credible than other types of addresses. Well, what does that mean? Like these shared offices, like these WeWorks and Reguses, where they are a commercial address, but they're not unique. It's a shared address. They give the same address to multiple businesses. That is less credible. Post office boxes are less credible, even if we try to make it sound fancy, like it's Suite 400 instead of Post Office Box 400. Every address is coded, the United States Postal Service database. Can't game the system, can't fool them. And then, of course, residential addresses are not considered as credible either. So again, you and I have a resource. If we have someone that is lacking in this area of credibility, we can provide them a unique commercial address. We call that our Cheap Business Address program. Do you have to have a unique commercial address to get funding? No, there's different sources of capital and each have their own underwriting criteria. Does this help? Yes. Does it give us access to some sources of funds we wouldn't have access to otherwise? Yes. But is it an absolute must? No. Is it an absolute must to have capacity, collateral, or credit? No. because different sources of capital look at different things. That's why we're gathering data to figure out what does the client qualify for. Now, the fifth C is actually the main topic of today, and it is called character. So while this has ramifications for those of us that are out conducting workshops online or in person, in other words, do we have the qualifications to be educating others, or we'll say perceived qualifications to educate others? That's not the point. Here we're talking about in terms of a loan package in the 5 C's, that it is good for clients to have a bio. Now, sometimes we'll get the question, well, what's the difference between a bio and a resume? Well, resumes typically list every employment that someone has had. You know, my first job when I was 16, my first job, which I didn't do very well at, was at McDonald's. So I don't brag about that. I mean, it's factual, so I don't hide it, but it's not really relevant. So a resume should theoretically list every employment, including dates and position held and so forth, title, where a bio is more a highlight of what's relevant. So I've included my humble bio here. So part of what we encourage clients to do is to have a bio. Why does that matter if they're not looking for a job? Well, depending upon the type of funding, because again, do all lenders look for a bio from the applicant? No. Do some? Yes. Why would they care? Well, we'll take Bernard here, who's online. Bernard has a history in the restaurant industry. So if Bernard wanted to go out and borrow $1 million to buy or start a new restaurant, frankly, he's got the credibility to do so. I don't. I've eaten in restaurants, but I've never worked, well, other than just part-time job in high school. I've never worked in one. I've certainly never been a manager in one. I've never owned one. So industry expertise can matter for some sources of capital. Does it matter for all of them? Absolutely not. So what we find is a lot of the clients we work with don't have a bio. So we'll go through my bio, not that it's anything great, but just to use as a template in case you, as a white label partner, have a client that doesn't have a bio. Again, I think this is also relevant to those of you, though, that are white label partners and are regional vice presidents, because being able to convey to others your education and experience might give your prospects more confidence. So on a simple bio, we just start with the contact information. You don't have to provide them every type of contact information, but what you want them to know. So your name, your email, and your main phone number. Let's talk about the phone number for a second, because we're running into this with some of our partners, some of our distribution partners. The number that you give out, that you use, should be a good number. What does that mean? Well, if you have voicemail on it, make sure that the voicemail recording sounds professional. If you have voicemail on it, make sure that it's not full. And in a perfect world, I know this sounds crazy and I'm being a bit sarcastic, so I apologize, but in a perfect world, phone calls are answered during the course of normal business. And so we have a main office number that is answered live 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Now, I have a mobile number, I have other numbers, but on my bio, I want my best number, right? We're showing our best number. And so for you all, I encourage you to be thoughtful, and same for clients. You know, if they're going to put their cell phone number on their bio, then is it a good greeting? Is their voicemail full? Do they answer the phone? You know, because it's kind of weird to think, well, I'm going to run a business, but I'm not going to really answer the phone. So when people call our main number, every number is answered. It could be a solicitor, it could be a prospect, it could be a client. The phone is answered. But let's move on. So basic information of a bio starts with your basic contact information that you'd want people to know. Now, for your friends and family, maybe you give them your cell phone number, but we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about on your bio. I would create a brief synopsis, very brief, that just describes who you are, or in the client's case, who they are. So if Bernard, as I mentioned earlier, he's my guinea pig for today, he's looking at getting funding to start a new restaurant or to acquire a restaurant, it needs to talk to that, right? It needs to be relevant. For those of us that are white label partners that are out helping clients, talking about how we help people, not a solicitation, but a synopsis of that. If you're a regional vice president, you're building a team of white label partners, it should match with that. So for mine, we'll just read through it. Thomas Montgomery has a passion for helping entrepreneurs start and grow businesses to create jobs, resulting in a positive economic impact and strengthening communities. With over 20 years of leadership experience, he has demonstrated expertise in positioning entrepreneurs to access capital through increased financial literacy, developing a lender-compliant loan package, and improving credibility to qualify for funding through the 3 C's. Now, again, you notice there are 5. I just referenced the main 3 here. He has personally assisted over 1,000 clients and so forth. And so it would be good for each of you to have a bio, and then we do encourage clients that are going through the capital raise process. This can be relevant if we're going after debt, money that we want to borrow, or equity based. I was talking to a client yesterday, for example, and he wants to borrow a large amount of money to do Forex trading. And so what we needed to vet through, and it's what we worked on yesterday, is okay, let's get your credibility on paper. So as you're seeking to go out and borrow millions of dollars to turn around and invest, let's tell the story why you're really qualified to do that. Now, conversely, you might say, oh shit, man, I want to start something completely different. This isn't going to work for me. Well, it's okay to change industries. It still would be nice to have a bio that talks about your credibility, but at the end of the day, there are some sources of capital that don't care about your bio and your industry background, some that do. So it's obviously helpful for us to gather information about each client to see what they do have, what their strengths are, so we can go in the right direction. So do you have to have industry experience or expertise to get a loan? No. Some sources of capital care about that, some don't. Okay, so after contact information and synopsis, then unlike a resume where you're listing, like I said before, listing every job that you've had with no gaps and titles and so forth, here you're typically just highlighting what you've done that matters. So because I like to keep bios to 1 page. Excuse me. So some of you, like Tony, who's on Steven's online, his bio would probably be 4 pages long because so much he's done. But I would create a synopsis, Tony, just down to 1 page. So for me, I'm currently with Business Paralegal, which you all understand that, of course. Previously, I was a full-time business professor at Tyler Junior College. I taught in-person and online courses as a full-time business professor. Before that, I worked for the SBA as a small business advisor, and give a little bit of detail there. At age 27, I was hired as the chief executive officer of a very large medical group in South Texas, in Houston area. I was recruited there from my prior position as an executive director. And when I first came out of graduate school, I worked for Deloitte. So again, whatever your bullets are fine. But if you could add the bullets that show your relevance and credibility to what you're doing, that would be helpful. So if you're a small business trying to get funding, listing so it shows that you have a background in that is helpful. Is it required? Again, no, because some sources of capital don't care about that. Volunteer experiences, to me, that's kind of soft and fluffy and doesn't really matter, but some readers care about that. So it is good to have some demonstrated volunteerism. And so I was with Habitat for Humanity and a SCORE mentor. If you don't have any volunteer experiences, you can leave that off, but it would be ideal to include that. And then ultimately you want to let them know what your education, license, or certification is. And so in my case, I've got the MBA and MHA, undergraduate degree, of course. I'm certified as a teacher in Texas. I used to be a public high school teacher. I think you knew that. And then also I'm a certified paralegal. So it doesn't matter what your background is. You can be like Tony and have lots of more qualifications than I have, or maybe you have less, but it really doesn't matter. The point is having a bio is best practice. Now, if you start going and speaking, doing live workshops, what will happen, even at the library, right? If you set up a workshop, an access to capital workshop at the library, typically the librarian will introduce you. Librarian is going to ask you in many cases, hey, do you have a bio? And so you'll hand the librarian the bio, ideally before the day of the event, so he or she's prepared, but often they'll read off or skim through this. So if you're going to do any type of public speaking, a bio is also very helpful. So kind of wrapping this up. So I think, as you know, how you and I, how we help clients, how we help small businesses access capital is primarily through our Access to Capital program. It's very unique. There's no upfront cost for the client when they enroll. There's no risk to the client. There's no minimum time in business to qualify for access to capital. There's no minimum credit scores to qualify to enroll in access to capital. We do guarantee a minimum. So often I talk to people, oh, 100,000 is the cap. No, it's just the opposite of that, right? It's what the contract says. It's what I say. It's what's in writing. 100,000 is the guaranteed minimum capital raise, not the max, the minimum. We're able to get the clients their first tranche of financing within just a couple of days, which is nice. And ultimately what we do is we help them build their financial literacy, build a loan package, and become credible on paper, talking about the 5 C's. So what questions do any of you have about one of two things, I guess? The 5 C's in terms of what they mean, or how you and I can help people that might have some deficiencies, understanding that not all sources of capital look at all 5 C's. And then secondly, do you all have a bio that's put together? If not, you should put a bio together for yourself, especially if you're trying to go out and conduct financial literacy workshops, putting yourself in front of others as a resident expert. It would really be helpful if you could back that up on paper, that you have some background for that. We will be asking clients that are going through the capital raise process as we're doing the loan packaging to provide a bio. A lot of them don't have one. And so this is the same structure we'd ask them to encourage. Okay, so questions, comments, concerns on this. It's so important that you don't misinterpret what I'm saying. We are not saying that a client has to have all 5 C's to get funded. That is an untrue statement. And it's not what I'm explicitly saying, and it's not what I'm implicitly suggesting. What I am saying, though, is that we need to work with clients to help them become as strong as possible on paper. We do need to assess their credit worthiness, so we know how will that affect their capital raise. We do need to look at their collateral to see how that would affect their capital raise. We do need to look at their capacity to see how that would affect their capital raise. It would be ideal if they have a commercial address, because it's going to help them with their capital raise. And from a character perspective, and maybe that's too strong of a word, but I didn't get to label it, character is a reflection of your educational history and background. Okay, questions, comments, concerns. It's important to understand what we do and what makes us different. The 5 C's, right? We are literally helping clients become more credible. And that's the secret sauce to getting funding, is becoming credible enough on paper. Well, how credible does someone need to be? You know, what business credit score? I'll get these questions. Well, what business credit score do they really need? It depends, right, on what source of capital. Some sources of capital don't look at business credit at all. Some do. Oh, personal credit. What's the personal credit they need? I don't know. I mean, it depends upon the source of capital we're going after. We need to look at the client more holistically to figure out what they're bringing to the table, then figure out the right type of capital, and then reconcile, okay, based upon that, are they ready to go to funding, or is there something that needs to be addressed? I'll tell you, it's not unusual that we see clients that are under collateralized. In other words, they have a collateral shortfall. Is that a problem? Absolutely not. We can add real assets to their balance sheet. Sometimes we see people that have capacity issues. Is that a problem? No, we can fix it with the opportunity fund. Sometimes we see that they're running a business that does not look credible because of their address. Is that a problem? Nope. No, we can fix it. Sometimes we see that they have credit issues. Is that a problem? No, credit's fluid. We can fix business or personal credit. Any questions, comments, concerns? This is, I think, should be very helpful information. Maybe not that exciting, but it should be very helpful information to understand what it is that you and I do as technical advisors. Questions, comments, concerns before we hang it up for today. The task for each of you is, of course, let's get at least one access to capital client submitted today. We've talked about the value proposition. If you're a white label partner, you should know how to do this. You go to your Dropbox folder, get the client under contract, and then get the funding app completed. Upload those both to Dropbox, let us know, and then we'll go get the client their first tranche of financing right away, get you paid right away, and then go build their loan package out. So you should know how to do this, and you should be focused on doing this. If you don't know how to do it, it's okay. Then reach out to us. You can email us at support. You can text us. You could call, but I'd ask not. We try to save the bandwidth on the phone call for clients. But if you need help as a RVP or as a white label partner, do not hesitate. Text us, say, hey, give me a call, or text the question specifically, and or email. Good to go? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll see you back tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye-bye.